Welcome to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. We are two retired New York City police detectives with over 20 years of law enforcement. If you like all things true crime related from that police perspective, hit the subscribe button and hit that notification bell so you will get all things DutyRon and this guy over here, somewhere over there, Ed Wallace, when we go live or upload a new video. Tonight, we are going to speak about Brian Laundrie, his confession in that notebook, the 8-page notebook. We've been speaking about it for the past 2 weeks. We're all just raring to go here tonight. We have two professionals who are going to come on. They're going to speak to us about what goes into authenticating or actually looking at statements. There's so much to talk about here. But before we get into it, Ed, as we always do, we want to say thank you to our Patreon supporters, the channel members, and all of the folks who positively engage in Crime Time with DutyRon. You are what makes this a great place, and we give thanks and praise to you guys, because without you guys, we have nothing. Ed, how you doing this evening? It's been just a couple of hours. We did a preview. What's going on?
Yeah, doing great, doing great. Very excited about tonight's show. I'm going to get my forensic geek on. So, we have two great guests that are going to get into all the areas, several areas of forensics that I love to share with our audience.
I am so looking forward to this. I'm telling you, at the office today, I was not thinking about anything but handwriting analysis, forensics, interview, interrogation skills. Like that's what we have.
Mm-hmm.
I just got a whole bunch of, listen, our audience has so many questions. The way this notebook was found, the way it was recovered, the secrecy, the way the Laundrie family was able to go out after the FBI, Fish and Wildlife, every agency looking for this guy in the reserve, and nobody could find him. Drone technology, everything. And all of a sudden, the parents go for a stroll into the reserve, and they go, oh, come on over this way. We looked at that Fox News reporter, Ruiz. He was embedded with them, and you and I were just like, what?
Yes.
So,
yes. After the water recedes, after the park opens, the next day, the parents go there and bada bing.
amazing.
Oh, look what we found.
And it just sends a message, and it spreads like wildfire. The people who are the naysayers, they come out. The naysayers are always there. Even if we as law enforcement do the job, we dot our I's, crosses our T's, they're always going to be, oh, there's some type of conspiracy theory. There's something that's going on. And listen, in this case, they were spoon-fed and fed so much, ammo to have that. Before we get into it and introduce our esteemed guests, and these two are fantastic, we're going to show you a small little piece. It's about 3 minutes. It just goes over the notebook. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. And at the end of this, stick around, because we are going to do a Q&A with both of our guests. They are so kind. And they said, when I asked how much time you got, they both said unlimited. It sounds Dave Rader-like, right?
Yes, yeah.
All right.
EquiSearch pal.
Yeah, our EquiSearch Midwest. Great guy. And I'm so proud to be a part of that great organization. All right, let's play this piece and let's get to our guests. Here we go, folks. This is for everybody who is outside the country or anybody that doesn't know what's going on. We're going to play this quick and we'll be right back to you.
At our first look at what he wrote about the death of his fiancée, Gabby Petito. It's his confession in his own writing, and legal experts say it could become evidence in a current lawsuit against the Laundrie family. Let's bring in Fox 13's Janae Lewis live in our newsroom with a story and what he wrote. Janae, this captured everybody's attention last year. What does this say?
It's still capturing everyone's attention now. Since the FBI discovered this notebook last year, there have been a number of questions about what was inside. Agents previously said Laundrie wrote his confession, but now we know why, at least in his words, he did it. Glimpses into his final words. The FBI recovered this notebook last year near the remains of Brian Laundrie in the Carlton Reserve in Sarasota County. And now for the first time, we are seeing what he wrote. Inside, FBI agents say he confessed to the murder of Gabby Petito. In the pages publicly released, Laundrie writes, I ended her life. I thought it was merciful, that it was what she wanted. But I see now all the mistakes I made. The FBI determined Laundrie killed Petito last year while on a cross-country trip. Her parents in New York reported her missing when they stopped hearing from her, then learned Brian returned home to Florida without her. Searchers found her body in Wyoming, and a coroner said she was strangled to death. Laundrie called her death an unexpected tragedy, saying Petito was hurt while they were at a park in Utah. He said he didn't know the extent of her injuries, but knew that she was in extreme pain, saying, "From the moment I decided, took away her pain, I knew I couldn't go on without her," adding, "I'm ending my life, not because of a fear of punishment, but rather because I can't stand to live another day without her. I've lost our whole future together, every moment we could have cherished. I'm sorry for everyone's loss." Forensic experts say extensive testing was likely done to determine the notebook's authenticity.
So one of the things that we can do, because of the water and the weather and everything, there may or may not have been DNA on it, but we can do a handwriting analysis.
The release of Laundrie's notebook comes the same week the parents of Gabby Petito had their first hearing in a lawsuit against Brian Laundrie's parents. They claim that as they desperately searched for their missing daughter, the Laundries already knew what happened and refused to speak to investigators because they were trying to protect their son. Analysts say the contents of his notebook could be a critical piece of evidence in the family's lawsuit.
If there is a date in the notebook, like a lot of people will date a diary or something like that.
The journal reveals a lot about what Brian Laundrie's intent was, and whether or not that crosses over into anything they contribute to his own parents, that's a different story.
Now, Brian's parents want the lawsuit thrown out. The judge says he'll decide in the next 2 weeks whether the case will proceed to a jury trial. If this happens, this will occur sometime in the next year. So, Mark, still a lot more unfolding and developing with this story.
There's so much to unpack there,
So
and to go back to where we were when all this was happening, to try to get in his mind. It's a grand tragedy for sure.
Well, there you go, folks. That pretty much sums it up. We're looking at the 8 pages coming in, and Ed, I'm going to let you take it from here because the excitement is going to start now. We got these great guests, so take it over, Ed.
Okay, so remember, folks, and we talked about this initially when the book was recovered. Me as a crime scene investigator, I would recover that book, and then I would look at the condition of the book and see if the ink was present, because remember, it was in a dry bag underwater, and it may have been exposed or wet, to see what the condition of the ink and the writing was. And there's all kinds of forensic examinations that the lab could do, and I would order that up in my workup for the book. I would look for fingerprints, DNA, hair and fiber, indented writing, and handwriting analysis. Now, we have to be careful how we process this book because some of these processes would be destructive to the handwriting analysis, okay? Because like the fingerprint processing for paper, we use a chemical called ninhydrin, and they have a solvent in it, and it could destroy the ink, things of that nature. And then there could be ink analysis, and there could be other things that could be done. But again, there's a process that has to go through, and we have to determine what comes first and what comes second, based upon the destructive nature of some of these exams. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in Cina Wong and Lieutenant Bob Shaffer. Okay. Welcome.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
All right, folks. So Cina Wong is an internationally recognized forensic handwriting expert and document examiner. She's board certified and court qualified. You may have seen her on ABC's 2020, Fox News, CBS, CNN, or Court TV. She has been mentioned in the New York Post and the Washington Post and USA Today. She's been in practice for over 30 years, even though she doesn't look that old. Her client list includes the top law firms in the U.S. Fortune 500 companies, the author and lawyer, John Grinson, and she is one of the handwriting experts in the John Benet Ramsey civil case. All right. Welcome, Cina.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Okay. In addition, we have Lieutenant Bob Shaffer. Bob Shaffer has been with the Loveland Police Department in Loveland, Colorado since 1986. Rookie. All right. He's currently the commander of the Criminal Investigations Unit at the Loveland Police Department. Since 1997, Lieutenant Shaffer has been a nationally respected expert in statement analysis. And he's going to talk about that discipline. Statement content analysis is a systematic examination of words, choices, structure, and other content of a subject statement to determine whether it's the product of one's memory or subconscious sources or imagination. In other words, meaning the memory truthful or subconscious sources deceptive. And he'll get better into that later in the show. And we're going to identify where in the narrative description exists. He regularly provides classroom training and statement analysis throughout the United States, Canada, Asia, the Middle East, and Mexico to audiences in law enforcement professionals, attorneys, arson investigator, private investigators, human resource specialists, and social workers. Okay. Wow. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies. And with that,
can I say one thing before you go forward?
Shoot.
I feel like I'm out of my league here right now. You know, being a fugitive enforcement detective by my career, you know, that was my, you know, that's what I did. I feel like I'm out of my league. And I got to ask Bob real quick, or Cina, the notes that I wrote when I was in high school, excusing myself from my parents, would you guys be able to look at that and get me in trouble?
I would.
Oh my!
The forged notes for mom.
You still have those?
I may have one in one of my strong boxes underneath my bed, but
I was telling him I think the statutes of limitations are over on that crime. Yeah, we can get your fingerprints, Ron, your DNA, and your handwriting analysis, and then Bob can tell you were a liar.
Golly, here I am. Thought I was scot-free almost at 60.
Okay. All right. So with that, let's get into it. So I'm the crime scene investigator, guys. You're my lab people. Okay. I collect this thing. Boom. I'm sending it up to the lab, and Cina, because as I talked about earlier, the destructive nature of the chemical fingerprint processing, possible DNA processing, which would have to cut pieces of the material out or swabs, whatever the case may be. I'm going to make you go up first. I want you to look at it first before we do any of those other things.
Absolutely. In any investigation, the destructive testing has to wait, and you have to do the non-destructive testing first. So as a forensic handwriting expert, I would take the pocket notebook, and I would take photos of it. I would scan all of the pages. I would count all of the pages to see if all of the pages are there. I don't know how many pages are in a pocket notebook, but I would look that up and to see if there is an equal number of pages in this book. And I would also measure the notebook and record any damages that may be in the notebook, meaning is there any blood, fluids, and as you mentioned, those can be sent off for DNA testing. So as I mentioned, what happens if the notebook doesn't have all of the pages in it? So let's just say it's a 50-page notebook, but what we have are maybe 30 pages, and we're wondering where the other 20 are. Obviously, they were ripped out, disposed of, but what you can do with an indented writing test, and you would take an electrostatic detection device, and it's a machine, something think of it like a large scanner, and you would put the document on top of it, and on top of that you would put a Mylar film, which kind of looks like saran wrap, and the machine has suction in it and will pull the paper down, pull the Mylar down, and then you can put like toner developing powder on top of that, and it sticks into the crevices of that page. And what will happen is it will show any other writing that has been done on top of that page. So maybe there was a page on top of it that said something else, but it was ripped out and thrown away. And that way you could find out, what was on the other pages. Now, in order to get to that point, to put a piece of paper from the notebook onto the machine to do this indented writing test, you first have to remove the double loop spiral bound on the notebook. And I didn't see that was done in this case.
Right.
And it would be, there would be an elaborate way you could do it, but it would be very difficult since it's not a large piece of paper like a regular size notebook paper. You're dealing with a pocket size notebook. So I didn't see that. And as Ed mentioned, with fingerprinting using ninhydrin, which is a solution that reacts with amino acids from your fingerprints, and it turns the whole document pink and purple, which would make it difficult for me as a handwriting expert to examine the writing after, there's all this pink and purple, solution on it. But I didn't see that on the notebook either.
Right. When I saw the notebook too, Cina, that immediately jumped out at me that they hadn't removed the metal binding. And so it appeared to me they didn't do any indented writing examinations. Definitely looking at the individual pages, no signs of any fingerprint processing.
Correct.
So
and no ink testing, because
right.
maybe they found a pen maybe in the van, right, that Gabby and Brian traveled around in, and maybe they wanted to know if that pen was connected to the writing in the pocket notebook. In order to do ink testing, an ink expert would take something like a hypodermic needle, kind of like when you get the flu shot, but they cut the tip off so you get a perfect round circle, and they use that as a little punch to punch throughout all of the ink. And we didn't see that there were any holes in any of the writing line, so we can assume that wasn't done, unless there's some other pages we haven't seen that there may be holes. But so we would do the indented writing test, and then I would come to the handwriting examination part. And what I would request are known handwriting samples of Brian's. We don't know what, if there are any dates in the notebook, but we would try and get it around a similar time period. It looks like he wrote in this notebook before he expired. So any handwriting samples within, the past several months before the incident. So I would compare that to see if Brian was the author of the writing in the notebook. But then I also would want to examine the writing of the parents, because we know that the parents in some way were supporting the efforts in protecting their son. And so I would also request handwritings from the parents, because there's something called familial handwriting characteristics. So it does not happen in all families, but in some families, they will have very unique handwriting that is very specific to them. One person copies a unique characteristic of a letter or the way something is written, and they'll incorporate it into their writing. And somebody else in the family will copy that person, and it goes on. The next thing you know, the whole family, they all have these strange and unique characteristics in their handwriting. So is that the case in this case? We're not sure. An examination of the parents' handwriting to the notebook would have to be done in order to figure that out, if there are familial handwriting tendencies, and if there's a possibility that the parents wrote the entire notebook or maybe wrote certain portions of it. So we would have to, to have a full examination and figure that out.
And if the parents weren't cooperating, then a warrant would be issued to grab those exemplars. And then you may also get a court order to ask them to give you exemplars of writing in your presence. You may give them a script or something to write. Is that something you would do sometimes?
Yes, that would be two types of handwriting samples. One, just as you mentioned, get a subpoena. They would go in. The investigators would go into the Laundrie's home and try and find any handwriting samples of the parents. And if they can't find enough, then the other option would be, or just to supplement, is to do what we call request handwriting samples. So that means we are requesting that the parents sit down, and I would dictate excerpts from the notebook and have them write it. I would have them write it with their dominant hand. That's the hand that they're used to writing with. And then I would also have them write it with their non-dominant hand. And I would have them switch back and forth and use those samples and the samples collected from the home to compare to the writing in the notebook.
Now, meanwhile,
I don't want to break up the continuity here, but somebody sent me a message on DutyRon.com, and they said, could it have been that they didn't take the binding off of the notepad because Brian Laundrie killed himself? And now this was coming in from a user. So I just wanted to, it's not the question and answer period, but I thought it was worthwhile asking that. Would they maybe have not decided not to take that off because he killed himself quickly after they, they already, when they recovered the notepad, they knew that he was deceased.
As a handwriting expert, I don't care what happened. I'm just focused on the documents and to get evidence from it. And it wouldn't matter to me if someone had passed away or not. It is up to me to uncover any evidence and information from those documents.
And as a crime scene investigator, and I'm dotting my I and crossing my T, whether this is going to trial or not is not a concern for me. If I'm trying to establish who actually wrote this, okay, who was in possession of it, their DNA, their fingerprints, in this case, Cina's discipline, then I remove the binding and process it. I don't leave any stone unturned. I dot my I and cross my T. And then I can definitively say, so no one can question me. Yeah, we did all the test on it, and it's his. Okay. Now, meanwhile, when Cina took all these photographs, now Cina, you could be sharing those photographs with Bob, and case because Bob doesn't need the original document to do what Bob needs to do. Correct, Bob?
That's correct. Yeah. The nice thing about what I do is all I do is look at words, and I look at the content of the story that's being told, the language, the phrasing, the content, the structure, actually the quantity of information, and they can get a lot of information that's kind of beneath the surface and determine if the statement, we'll just call this a statement, it's a suicide note, but whether it's legitimate, where there might be deception in it, if the person is not being forthright, and what parts of it are true. I can tell an awful lot about, and this is going to, from my perspective with this particular document, a lot about the relationships between the people that were described in the story. So yeah, the physical evidence of it, I have nothing to do with that. It's all content. There's nothing better in terms of evidence than what the person who experienced that event knows. It's all in their mind. They know what happened, and the subconscious mind wants to find a way to tell that truth, even if the person is going to be deceptive. If they have a need to deceive us, the subconscious is going to get the truth out, and so that's what I look at. The content.
Okay, and so while Cina's doing her thing in the lab, you can get her photos and do your thing, and probably you would probably finish before Cina would, because she has a lot more work to do.
Yeah, that's right. I take the images that she sent, and I type them out. There is something about the handwriting style. I glean a little bit out of that, but mainly as content. And so as I took those images and typed it out, it took me, well, I don't type very fast, so it took me a couple hours, but I can go through this thing in a matter of 2, 3, 4 hours and find out what I think I need to know about the person who wrote it, what state of mind they were in, whether it's from their memory or whether they're creating some of the story. This was a very interesting document to examine, the content. Very interesting. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to get into that in a minute. So Cina, let's finish up with your process and where we're going with this.
So if I'm able to get the handwriting samples from the parents, then I would do my examination, and I would either be able to identify whether they wrote portions or to rule them out. And of course, I would have had Brian's handwriting, and that would have helped me to either solidify whether he wrote it or not. So those are the assumptions that we can make at this point. But I know there's a common fact in handwriting that people, well, I should say a common information in handwriting that people believe is the truth, but it's not, and it's actually a myth. And I thought I would put it out there that it's a misnomer that you can tell whether a handwriting is written by a male or a female. And I've done many talks before, and when my friends send me greeting, birthday cards and other cards, I've saved all of their handwritings, and I show a male handwriting that everybody believes is feminine, and I show some handwritings from some of my female friends that some people believe are from male. So you cannot rely on that.
Wow. Thank you for that, Cina, because a lot of people, even myself, thought that, you can kind of weed it out. Okay, this is coming from a woman. It's too neat. This is coming from a guy. It's all scribbled and garbled. But yeah.
Yes, very good. And so what are some of the things you look for in your comparisons?
Yes. So in this case, what stands out when I look in the notebook is the personal pronoun I, and all it is one vertical line. And that's not the way we were taught to write the personal pronoun I. We were taught to write it with a vertical line and then a horizontal line on the top and a horizontal line on the bottom. So I'm not saying what Brian did with the personal pronoun I is absolutely unique, because there are other people that write their personal pronoun I that way. But I'm looking for, how did someone deviate from the way they were normally taught to write? So you remember in school when they actually had penmanship class? I'm not sure if they still have those anymore,
They
but
do.
They don't teach scriptive.
unfortunately, but do they even teach printing anymore? I hope.
I think so.
And the teacher would be up on the board and say, write your A, B's, and C's this way. And you would copy them and you would get graded on how well you copied the forms that the teacher put on the board. And we call it copybook form. And we would write that style and we would grade it on it. But then as we progressed forward into the grades, they stopped grading us. So what did we do? Right? We started putting in our own individual interesting characteristics into the handwriting. We deviated from the way we were taught to write, but we do keep some structure with regards to the foundation of how we were taught to write, which is how we're able to read each other's handwritings. Maybe not my doctor's, but that's a joke. Everybody said, oh, you cannot read a doctor's handwriting. But most of the people, you can read their handwriting, even though they've deviated from copybook form. And so what I do is I look for all of the deviations that are in the writing in the notebook, and then I look to see if the same deviations are in Brian Laundrie's known handwriting. And then I would also then look at the parents' handwriting to see if they have those same deviations. And if it's a familial issue where all of the family members are sharing the same characteristics, then I have to dig in deep and look further and to see, all right, how are these handwritings different from each other, and then go from there.
Very good. Very good. Why don't you quickly tell the audience how you got involved in this?
In this profession?
Yes.
So when I was 14 years old, just like any parent, you want your children to have the best education possible. And my parents saved up their money and sent me to a very prominent boarding school in San Jose, California. And they wanted me to have this great education from this school. But unfortunately, there were some girls there who didn't like it that I was the only Asian person in that school. And because I was different, they came into my dorm room one night, 10 girls, and they beat me severely. I passed out. I got cut up. And when I woke up in a corridor far away from my room, and I woke up in a pool of my own blood. And I remember somebody saying my voice, and it sounded so far away. And it was another student trying to see if I was okay. But from that incident, the school just sent me back to my room, and I was terrified. And I would put a rug under the door to prevent somebody else from coming into the door. But in the month following that incident, I started receiving death threat notes. And the headmaster of the school said, bring me these death threat notes, and I'm going to take them to a handwriting expert at the police station, and he'll be able to determine who's been writing these notes. And then 3 months go by, and I was a very shy child back then, no longer shy, but I went to the headmaster's door, to his office door, and I knocked on it, and he only cracked it open about this much, and I could just see his eyes and his nose. And he said, what do you want? And I said, I just wanted to know if you've heard from the handwriting expert at the police station. And he said, I never, ever want to hear you talk about this again. You're not allowed to talk to anybody in the school about this, and you're not allowed to talk to your parents about it. And he slammed the door in my face. And so as I sat there staring at the maple grain on his office door, I made a promise to myself that someday I would become a handwriting expert, so I would have the skill to protect myself if something like this happened, and to also help victims of handwriting crime. So that's how I got to where I am today.
No, thank you for sharing that. See, folks, out of evil comes this greatness. Okay, in Cina. That was horrific story.
Powerful.
Okay, so Bob, your mic is muted. Okay, good. I'm muted. So let's get into your portion of this now. I'm gonna, if you want me to, I can project your document up here. Do you want me to do
if
that?
you have that up there, yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. All right, so then you can walk our audience through what you did. So
Yeah,
I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah.
Let's wait till Ed gets that document up, because it might take him just a minute, because he's got to split his screen.
Okay.
I want to say thank you to the super chatters and everyone who's in the chat engaging. You guys are awesome. We're watching. Hold the questions towards the end. I see that people are still sending in questions. What I'd like you folks to do is just to hold the questions to the end, and then at the end we'll circle back and we'll ask the questions with our esteemed guests. All right, Ed, you got it up?
I got it up. Can you all see it?
No,
No? All right, hold
I
on.
just added it. I added it.
There we
I
go.
Got it? Okay.
I took charge.
All right.
Bob, we're working together, boss. What
Okay,
happened?
well-
Now it's black.
Okay, you said you, all right, hold on. I'll put it back up. Hold on. I thought you took it.
All right,
I
hold
thought,
on.
yeah, okay. There we go.
There we go.
All right, so Bob, direct me through it. Do you need me to make it larger?
No, I'm good because I have a copy here in front of me, so I can see it. But okay, so what I explained earlier that I look at content. I don't look at any of the physical aspects of the statement. I look at the content and equate that to a thought process. What was the person thinking when they wrote it? How are they thinking? And I glean a lot of information out of that. What you're seeing there is just really, for me, it's just note taking. Each one of those colors and lines and circles and notations is a different part of represents a different part of language, and it's a visual reminder for me as to what's there. Each one of those colors and little hieroglyphics has a different meaning to it, and so it's just, for me, it's basically it's a roadmap. It's a map of a person's thoughts. That statement, that document, is the closest thing that we have to a videotape of that event. If you could get inside of Brian Laundrie's mind with a video camera and videotape his thoughts, that's what it would look like if he's the person that wrote it. So
These are your notes, Lieutenant. These are your notes from the Laundrie notebook, right? You kind of put this together.
Yeah, this is a transcript of the notebook. So I took it, typed it out. It's just easier to read that way, and then I put all the other stuff on it. And so
I kind of knew it. I just wanted to. So some people weren't following, so I wanted everybody to understand what that was.
Oh yeah, they see the handwritten version, and then it's just easier for me to see it and understand what's there. So all that stuff you see on there is my notes, and tells me what's going on. And it would take, well, when I teach this class, it takes me about a week to explain all this stuff to people. So I'm a little challenged here to get people to understand what I'm looking at in just a few minutes. But as a general rule, I can look at this document and determine what parts of it are true, what parts of it are intended to mislead the reader. I guess you'd call that a lie, but it's more of a deception. And a lot about hidden meaning in the language. And when I say hidden meaning in this case, it's a lot about the relationships between the people. So there's a premise that I go into this analysis, and that is that every crime ever committed is the result of a problematic relationship. Relationships are everything. If I don't have enough money, I'm going to steal it. If I don't like somebody, I'm going to kill them. And so relationships cause, I know it's kind of odd, but relationships cause crime. And so knowing what the relationships are between the people in this document, i.e. Brian and Gabby, and there's some references to siblings and friends and family, what those relationships are tell me a lot about what's going on in his mind and what parts of it are true and not. I know it's a little convoluted, but there are definitely signs in this statement that whoever wrote it is intending to mislead the reader, create a different impression than what really happened.
So Bob, you have these color code schemes here for highlights. Are you able to share that with us, or you want to keep that a trade secret?
Yeah, no, that's okay, because it's without getting too in depth. I think rather than the colors, some of the other hieroglyphics and markings in there are probably a little bit more important. You'll see a lot of circles in there.
The red circles.
Yeah, red circles. Those are pronouns. And not to get all grammatical on everybody, but pronouns are probably the most important thing that I look at. And that's what those pronouns are. What going to reveal the nature of the relationships between the people in the story. As an example, the word we, and you can see that up towards the top of this in the first 5-6 lines. You see the word we and our and us quite a bit. The word we, to your subconscious mind, it means something good, a good close relationship. So whenever we see the author use the word we in regard to somebody else and themselves, it means that things are good. The relationship is good. If we don't see the word we, it means that the relationship is less than that, something downgraded. So I use pronouns to give me an idea of the nature of the relationship. And there's also, you'll see towards the middle of this page, in the narrative and on the sidebar, a little circle with an X through it, and that tells me where there's a pronoun missing, meaning grammatically it needs to be there, but it's not. And some people might say, well, that's just bad grammar. And it's like, no, it's our author here has demonstrated that he knows how to use a pronoun or those words properly, and when he leaves them out, it's one of the strongest signs of deception that exists. And I'll give you an example here. If your audience can see line 15 there, there's a black kind of a marker there. That's where he describes, that's the very, very beginning of the actual event that led to her death. And he says, rushing back to our car, trying to cross streams of Spread Creek before it got too dark to see. There's a little circle there with an X through it. He left out a pronoun. And most people we don't know what that pronoun is. Is it the word I? Is it the word we? Is it she and I? It doesn't say. There needs to be a person attached to that action. What that represents in the person's subconscious is a lack of commitment. It's an extremely strong sign of deception that he leaves the pronoun out there. It's a sign that he can't commit to what he's saying. It's not dependable information. It's intended to mislead the reader. And so that happens heavily in his description of I guess he called it the death event. He leaves these pronouns out, and they're critical to credibility. And so I can say with confidence that his description of what happened that led to her death is misleading the reader. It didn't happen the way that he said.
Mm-hmm. What other things jump out at you, like the lowercase g in Gabby? Is that interesting?
Yeah, that's a big one. So again, relationships are everything. If you know the nature of the relationships, you can get to the underlying cause of the crime. And so the lowercase g, and when I got this transcript, I saw some other transcripts online, and they had capitalized it. And I went back to the original images, and he didn't capitalize her name. Now, we'll go back to, you were talking about the word I, the first person singular I. Cina was talking about that. Well, a person who uses the lowercase I when they're talking about themselves, first person singular, and they write the lowercase I, the dotted version, that is a sign of a person who could possibly be suffering from low self-esteem, low self-image, low self-respect. That concept carries over to other parts of language. So if he didn't capitalize her name, which would be the proper way, capital G, it's a sign of disrespect. It's a sign of a problematic, downgraded, conflicted relationship. It's a sign of disrespect. It's like the author saying she's not worthy of capitalization. It's minimizing them. And some people might say, well, it's just bad grammar, bad handwriting. But he's demonstrated in the rest of the document he knows how to capitalize people's names, but he doesn't with hers, and he did it several times. So there's a clue there that when he does that, it's a sign of disrespect and conflicted, downgraded relationship. Their relationship was problematic for sure.
Mm-hmm. And as we go through the document, we come down and you put some findings down here at the bottom. So these are what you saw as signs of deception.
Yeah.
You want to go over this?
Yeah, the missing pronouns, I talked about that. It's I'm not a real Freud fan, but Freud made the comment when he said the most difficult thing for a person to say is "I did it," meaning a confession. Right. And so if you just say the words "did it," you don't have anything. The word "I" means everything, and so the missing pronouns are a person's way of coming close to telling the truth, coming close to confessing, but their subconscious just won't let them do it. And so the missing pronouns are extremely strong signs of deception. The tense problem, there's an example that, that could get a little complicated, but when a person is recalling from memory, if somebody asks the question, okay, you tell me what happened, tell me the story about what happened, a truthful statement comes out of memory in the past tense. Right. It's told in the past tense because it happened in the past. Well, if a person is deceptive, many times that translates into telling the story in the present tense. And so we look for tense violations, past tense versus present tense. Present tense suggests that the person is altering that story with some other information, not just memory. Memory equals truth, and they're editing and filtering and affecting that story, and it comes out in the form of present tense. So again, a lot of grammatical stuff. Now, some of the other things I had there, I thought it was pretty interesting, and up in lines 6 through 10, I looked at his language, and he said, when I close my eyes, I will think of laughing on the roof of the van, falling asleep to the sight of a meteor shower at the Crystal Geyser. The funny thing is, he says, when I think, I will always love you. This, I'm sorry to everyone this will affect. He's thinking into the future. He's not thinking I'm going to be dead. He is actually saying, every time I do this from this point on, I'm going to be thinking of these things. It's like, well, if you were committing suicide, there is no future. And so it's really an odd, very odd way of stating things when he's on the verge, probably moments away from killing himself, allegedly, but he talks about what he's going to be doing in the future. Doesn't make any sense.
Lieutenant, you're saying line 6 through 10 here?
Yeah. He says, I'll be thinking of laughing on the roof of the van. It's like, well, you won't be thinking of anything because you're going to be dead. You're going to commit suicide.
Yeah.
You won't be thinking of that in the future. I will always love you. Always. What do you mean by that? He's going to be dead.
Yeah. And
so there's suggestions here that he is thinking into the future and not being dead. So, so that's just kind of some of the things that I looked at here, that there's some things that make me cock my head to the side and go, that isn't making sense to me if he intends to commit suicide. Yeah. Another thing that I see here, just for your audience to consider, is that in line 12, you can see it right there in the middle of all those X's. That represents where he scribbled something out. And if you look at the original document, he scribbled something that he wrote, or whoever wrote it, scribbled it out so dark we couldn't read it. That's a sign of somebody who wrote something and then realized, I don't want the reader to know that. They're trying to conceal that information. And that's a strong sign of deception. They're withholding something from us. And when I see a correction that raises a huge red flag that the person is being deceptive at that point in the story. And
now, Bob, if I might jump in here at that point, so that would be a good place for indented writing search. In addition, alternate light sources could be used to try to penetrate the ink to see what was behind it. Cina, you want to jump in on that?
Yes, absolutely. Indented writing, not so much in this case because it was crossed out over and over again, so we're just going to see a bunch of swirls. But with alternate light sources, by using different lighting on it, we might be able to bring up what is actually written under the obliterated area.
All right, thank you.
Fascinating.
Bob, continue, please.
Yeah. That happens again down in line 25. I hate to have you keep scrolling around, but
no, that's fine.
That one's pretty significant because it happens during the event itself, the event that led to her death. And so he wrote something, or whoever wrote it and decided in their mind, oh, I can't let the reader know that. There's something there I wrote I don't want them to know. And so they cross it out. He scribbled it out so dark, there's just no way of determining what that is. They really did not want the person reading it to know what they wrote there. So again, the subconscious is really writing the statement. And when they realize that they've been betrayed by their subconscious, they edit it, but it's already on paper. All they can do is scribble it out. So I pay really close attention to what's happening where there's corrections. Corrections equal deception is present.
You seem to have had a field day on this 8-page notebook, Lieutenant. There was a lot in there that was reeking deception and so forth, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I could go on for hours on this one. Yeah.
Wow.
It's
amazing that we don't get to hear.
One other feature I just want to bring out.
Sure.
And that is that I was asking myself, who is he writing, or who is the person writing this statement to? And he starts out writing it to Gabby, and he's talking to her allegedly, and then suddenly it jumps to he in line 7. He says, if you were reading Gab's journal, and talks about, he goes from talking to her to talking to some unknown reader, I guess. He jumps back and forth in the story between addressing her and addressing the reader. But one really odd thing is that he tells the reader in line 14, do not make this harder for them. And it's like, well, who's this directed to? He, instead of leaving, let's put it this way. He talks to Gabby, who's dead. He talks to the reader, whoever that is, and he talks about his family, and he talks about her family, but he never talks to them.
Right.
It's always
it's weird because in line 14 it says, to my nephews, please do not make this harder for them.
Yeah. Well, he says she'd be a new daughter to my mother and aunt to my nephews, period. Right. Then he says, please don't make this harder on them. So who is he talking to? He's talking to the reader, but who he doesn't talk to is his family or her family. Right. He talks about them, but not to them. And that's unusual. And there's, I've done a lot of research into suicide notes, and there's a lot of personal comments made in suicide notes. Although this does demonstrate a lot of the characteristics of a legitimate suicide note, there's some things that are kind of outside the norm. And so I guess, everything that I've mentioned there, I know it gets a little convoluted and there's a lot to talk about here, but what I can say based on the content here is that their relationship was very strained, conflicted, problematic, and I don't trust his description of how she died. I don't trust it at all, based on the language. So notice one place in line 15 where he says, rushing back to our car.
Right.
Yep. Well, in line 23, he changes that. He changes it to the car.
Oh, yeah.
So up at line 15, it's theirs together. There's a relationship there. But when he says down in line 23, it becomes the car, which means it's no longer both of theirs. There's a clue there, kind of a preview of coming attractions, that he knows she's going to be dead. It's no longer our car. It's just the car. And so it's, again, this subconscious releases this information, and there's clues there when you look at them collectively that suggest that his description of her death is not accurate.
Right. And technically, she is the registered owner of that vehicle.
Oh, yep. I didn't have any of that outside knowledge.
Yeah, she is.
Another thing about
the family just got that vehicle back. So
one thing about this that I thought was curious also is that in line 32 it says, I ended her life. And I thought, well, I don't know. It also was, he said it later on about himself. He said, I am ending my life. Now, if he wrote this, he would know what he did to end her life. This is a very vague, generic, unknowledgeable comment about how her life was ended. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, I know there's some question as to maybe who wrote this, but if that evidence was not public knowledge about how she died, you'd have to write it that way because you didn't know how she died. Was she shot? Was she strangled? Was she stabbed? Was she beaten? And if the person who wrote it didn't know that, they would have to state it as, I ended her life. And right. So does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely amazing.
The same with his. He said, I'm ending my life. It's like, well, that could be written by somebody who doesn't know the details of that death.
And the way you put this together with the line down from line 32 going straight down and across to his statement in line 37, I am ending my life. As you know, so this is interesting information that none of us would look at and pick this apart. I have so many questions in my own mind about this. Like, I feel that he may have penned this notebook, 8 pages, but I feel like he had input from not only his mother and father, but perhaps his attorney, because the way some of this stuff was worded and the way it seems like it's almost intentionally garbled up a bit to throw people off. But
it does come across as though there's an outside influence into the story. Yeah,
that was my take on it. And I don't know anything about this, so, but I did feel like he was definitely, this was not his writing wholeheartedly by himself. I felt like he had influences here. And
there's another document that we'd like to get our hands on. Hopefully, maybe someday we will, which was written by the mother and placed in the van. And it said, burn after reading on the envelope. So clearly she didn't want anybody but her son to have read this. I'd like to see what the content of that, and their family lawyer has that document. So hopefully that'll come out in the civil case.
Do they, the lawyer has it because it was given to them by the FBI, or do you know?
Yes, the FBI gave it back to the Laundrie family attorney.
Wow. I'm surprised the FBI didn't hold on to all of this evidence, the writing evidence, and it's like, here, take it.
Yeah, they just gave it up. I want to just take a minute here quickly to say thank you to all of the live viewers, the replay viewers, and all the folks who sent in super chats and became members. If you're not yet subscribed to Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace, please consider subscribing at this point. If you haven't shared this video, share it out onto your social media platform. Again, we do lots of informational live streams like this with expert guests. And we're not close to ending yet, but I want to say thank you to Cina Wong and Lieutenant Bob Shaffer. Ed, we're going to spare the lieutenant your singing that you did earlier about Shaffer beer. But I'm sure he has heard
it's
that.
spelled differently.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
But that's just cop humor. So that's what we do.
Back here in New York in Shea Stadium, they used to, Shaffer beer was the one of the sponsors. And every time a player made an error, they would light up the E in Shaffer. And it was a New York local beer. I don't know that.
Oh yeah, I know Shaffer beer. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I didn't think you were going to go into it, Ed, but you did. All right.
Well, he deserves an explanation.
Absolutely. He's one of us, Ed. He understands.
So great stuff, guys. Bob, is there anything else you want to finish off with concerning your analysis?
Yeah, just real quick. Is something that, I said relationships are everything, and crime is always caused by a conflicted relationship. And there's one last thing towards the end of this document in line 40. Of all the times that he referred to Gabby, first of all, he uses a lowercase g, which is really problematic. But of all the references he could have used, my fiance, my girlfriend, my lover, my whatever, the only time he describes her, he says, she's the most wonderful girl in the world. So he refers to her as a girl. He could have used any language he wanted to describe that relationship, but he describes her as a girl. And it's just not expected that if the relationship was as strong as he's trying to convince us of, he would have referred to her as a girl. That's actually an immature person. A girl is youthful, non-adult. And so I think that's a clue as to how he perceives her. His perception of her is important, and he perceives her as a girl, not a woman, not a fiance. I just think that the relationship references in this statement really give us an insight into how he perceives her, and that the relationship was problematic.
Not an adult equal.
Pardon me?
Not an adult equal.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Notes also, and this is confusing. He says, Gabby, I'm sorry. He says, I have killed myself in this creek in the hopes that animals may tear me apart. That may make some of her family. If he's speaking to Gabby, why would he refer to her as her? there's an outside influencer. He's speaking to Gabby, and then on the same comment refers to back to whoever the reader is. I would expect him to say that may make some of your family happy. There's the target audience of this document is switching constantly between she and the reader and other people, and so it's just not typical at all of how a statement would come out of memory.
It sounds like it was being dictated.
It could have an outside influence into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
If there hasn't been much doubt, and we've solidified it here strongly tonight with the help of Lieutenant Bob Shaffer, that's for sure. I read this several times over, and some of this stuff I just kind of went over quickly and didn't stop and look at it piece by piece like you do. This is your profession. This is what you do. This is invaluable insight. A lot of folks who are going to watch this replay are going to be blown away by this, Bob, and I'm hoping that after we take our questions and the little Q&A period here, I'm hoping that you'll consider, both of you guys consider coming back again when they get Roberta Laundries, that's his mother, the letter that she wrote and said burn after reading. And maybe we can, because there's nothing criminal going on here. We could pick this thing apart and have a field day with it. So I'm hoping that the two of you will be willing to come back. And I know our audience loves you guys. Everybody's sending in so many nice accolades in the chat. Just blown away by the amount of information that you are providing here tonight. So I can't thank you guys enough for joining us.
Ditto here. Ditto.
Yeah.
So let's jump into the audience and see if you got any questions for our esteemed guest.
Well, I have one that came into DutyRon.com, and it comes in from Jeffrey Crowley. She is a YouTube subscriber, a channel member, and a great friend. She says, "Hi, DutyRon. I'm wondering why the writing arcs on the first page, why there are writing arcs on the first page and not on the following pages. Do you think he was writing over his thigh? ? Is there a way to determine over what period of time?" The self-serving piece of, okay, I'm not going to say, this is kind of a couple of expletives there. Was the same pen used throughout? Is it possible his mother wrote some of it? Personally, I believe it was physically written by him, but I really think his mother helped him word it. Love and respect, from Jeffrey. I'll let Cina, you want to jump on that?
Excellent question about why the writing arcs on that one page, and that's due to the writing position of the person. Yes, he could have been writing on his knee. He could have been reclining and writing over his backpack, or maybe laying down and writing over his backpack. Maybe he was hunched over a rock. So we don't know exactly what position he was in, but we know he wasn't sitting at a desk writing that. But yes, that could get in the way. And what was the other question?
There was a question about the spacing. I had it up, but it came down.
Hold on, I don't know what happened to it.
All right, hold on, I got it.
Right,
does the spacing between words mean anything? Changing from person to person to a narration, what does that say, if anything, about one's mental state? Or I do this day to day in interpretation.
Oh, that would probably be for Lieutenant Bob.
Bob?
Well, I don't know for a fact. I've been told about spacing, that shows a slower thought process, more deliberation. But I don't know that it really alludes to anything in terms of personality or character or deception or truthfulness. But I think it has something to do with how the speed at which they were writing. It's more deliberate. But again, I can't confirm that. I've learned that in various trainings, but I don't know how valid that is.
Okay, I have another one before Ed reads it off. This came into the DutyRon.com website. Thank you for sending in these questions. Hello, DutyRon. It comes in from Athena. She says, "I'm very suspicious of the use of word car in the note." She doesn't specify what page, but I'm sure, Lieutenant Bob, you probably know where he refers to the car. I believe Brian would have written van if he was referring to their van, because both of them in their videos and in all their conversations, it was always, they referred to it as the van. But in the note, it says the car. I tried to get her back to the car. She feels that Roberta, the mom, could have dictated car to him and he wrote it. What's your thoughts on that?
That's a possibility. And again, I had a little bit of suspicion around the use of the word our and the related to the car. And so that was, I wasn't, I guess, when I think back on the images that I've seen on TV, it was a van, and I didn't realize that. And I don't really allow that kind of outside knowledge to seep into my analysis. That the language is what it is. But so the word car is not suspicious in my discipline, unless it mentioned the van in one place and then changed it to car. That would be very significant. But in and of itself, from looking at the statement and introducing some of the outside evidence into it, could be suspicious. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, and again, I know that you don't have this intel that I watched and listened to the two of them speak on their YouTube channel and on their social media, and they always referred to it, and they did it lovingly at that time, the van, and they always said the van.
Mm-hmm.
At no point in time did they ever refer to that van they were traveling in as a car.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a pretty good point brought up by Athena. So thank you for that, Athena. Let's see if we can grab one for Cina, because I feel like she's left out right now.
Well, I'll give this one to Cina. Are you able to tell how old the letter is, or roughly when it was written? Fading of the ink or any cracks in the ink?
Well, there's an issue in this case that the pocket notebook was in the backpack, correct?
Or a waterproof dry bag, yeah.
Because I was wondering if this dry bag was out in the elements for so long, or even if it was in the water, how did that notebook stay intact so well? And why isn't the ink running more? But so is a dry bag is like airtight?
Yeah, it's supposed to keep everything inside of it dry. But I did remember seeing a hole in it, but who knows when that occurred. But in addition, though, that same type of pad, I don't know if you've ever seen this, Cina, you probably have, the Write in the Rain pad. Have you ever seen those pads?
The waterproof? The waterproof ones. Yes, they call them like field notebooks that you can take them out into the rain. Yes.
Yeah. So it looked like it might have been that. I put a link in a previous episode because it looked like it was the same size and shape and the same binding as what I'm used to with the Write in the Rain pads.
And so since the ink in this case was compromised by moisture, it might be difficult to have it tested by an ink expert, but this practice has kind of been fading away, but many of the ink pens that we use have tracers in them, like the ink, the company that makes the pens, who also make the ink, they put like little tracers, some sort of chemicals that when they test the ink, they know which batch it came from and what year it came from. So if you have a document in question from 1980, maybe it's a contract or a will, but then the ink on that document of the signature in question didn't exist until 2000, then you know that the document could not have existed in 1980. So that would not be an issue in this case. I just think that regarding the date, ink has to be drying at least 3 months before an ink expert will test it to be able to tell how new the ink is, if it's still drying or if it's been there for a long time. So because it was affected by maybe some moisture in this case, I don't think it would be helpful. All they would be able to tell is what type of ink pen and maybe possibly what year was the ink produced.
Well, good. Here's another question for you, Cina, and I know you touched on it earlier. Can a person try to disguise their handwriting by writing with their opposite hand, and can that be detected?
Absolutely. So someone can write with their opposite hand and disguise their, but not for that entire notebook. What happens is our handwriting, it's motor memory, kind of like riding a bike. You, even if you have not, if you were taught how to ride a bike and stopped riding a bike, years later, you can get on the bike and you pretty much remember what you need to do. Sit down, move your legs up and down, and it'll propel you forward. Handwriting is the same way. When you sign your signature, you don't even need to look at the piece of paper to sign your signature, because it is the memory that you've trained your brain. The signals come down to your hand and you just execute the signature and just sign it. So if you decide to write with your opposite hand, you're fighting against what your brain already knows how to do. And your writing will be slower as you're disguising it, because you're being more aware of what letters that you need to change. But once you get past a paragraph or three, then even your own natural handwriting habits will start kicking in through your non-dominant hand.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
That's some great information right there. Hey, so Jackie Shaffer, no relation to Lieutenant Bob. Do you ever consult linguists for input or sentence structure?
Linguists, you mean?
Yeah,
Okay.
linguists.
Read that. Say that one again. It wasn't.
Do you ever consult linguists for input on sentence structure, dialects, dated speech, coagalisms, etc., or is this part of your own training?
No, I do this all on my. Yeah, I do this all on my own, so I don't really consult with anybody. It's a very unique set of different areas of examination, and all those areas that you just touched on there, and so they all play a role in the analysis. And but no, I don't consult anybody else. I just do this all on my own.
Awesome. And how did you get involved? Like, you didn't start your police career out doing this. You started in '86. I mean, you're a dinosaur right now. So yeah.
Thanks for reminding me. Yeah.
Listen, we're in the same boat. We're almost the same age, probably. You might, I might even have a year or two on you, but you age well, Bob. So congratulations on that. But how did you get involved in this? We heard the Cina story.
So back in 95 or 96, I was in personnel, and then my job was to hire cops. That's all I did. So there was a lot of interviewing involved, thousands of interviews. And one of my good friends introduced me to, and I'll credit him, a man named Avignon Sapir, and he is the guru worldwide when it comes to statement analysis. And I went to a training. In fact, I was so interested. I went to like 5 or 6 trainings and ended up teaching for him. And so I used it in my job in personnel when it came to interviewing people for pre-employment interviews. I could tell whether they were lying about their experience and other things like that. And then when I went into investigations, that carried over into interviewing suspects and victims, suspects, witnesses, and it doesn't matter. So it was of all places in professional standards that I learned about statement analysis, and it's been about 26 years now that I've been doing it. So
fantastic.
Yeah, and I have to say, I've taken Bob's course, and it is amazing. It's helped me out greatly. When I watch another expert testify, or if I am present during their deposition, I can tell whether they're not telling the truth or they're trying to talk around it and avoid it. Also helps me when I watch politicians on TV and they say something, I'm like, you're lying, because Bob taught me that. So very helpful information. And if I highly recommend everybody to take Bob's course. It's fabulous.
If it's a politician, that's a give me.
Bob, I have your website up. I believe this is right.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, thank you.
So it's linked down below in the description of this broadcast. So if you guys want to jump on there, there's classroom training, online training, things of that nature. There's videos on here. Who's this young fellow in the right?
Look at that picture. I look awesome back then. Yeah.
Holy cow. Let me grab that. Where did it go? I clicked
on. I will post this analysis on the website probably tomorrow morning. And so if somebody wants to read it and get an idea of some of the other comments they've made there, then they'd be happy to do that. So excellent.
So this is the website. There's a chock full of information on here. There's question and answers, facts, and all different kinds of stuff here. And there's a contact page. So Bob, you can probably expect your phone to be blowing up maybe tonight, tomorrow.
That's what I need, more work.
Yeah, same with Cina. Do you have her stuff?
I have, of course. I put it. Ed, I know we're gentlemen like, right? But
Yes.
he was speaking, and I thought it was appropriate to put his up first. And I know Cina was talking about him and highlighting him, so I put his up first. Here we go on her website. I'm going to go full screen. You want to talk a little bit about some of this stuff on here?
Oh, yes, and that's a very old photo. My apologies.
You look
So,
beautiful. Don't worry about it.
only people, when people are victims, that's when they call me. So when I pick up the phone, it's always a sad story, but I do my best to help them out because I know what it's like to be in their position. So anything that has to do with a signature, a document being in question, did someone substitute a page, and especially anonymous writings, especially like the John Benet Ramsey ransom note.
Yeah.
So any kind of documents where there's writing, not even documents, bathroom walls, I've examined to see who wrote something on a bathroom wall, and non-compete clauses in business documents, all of those, anything that deals with handwriting or a signature.
Every time I fire someone at my office, I always get something written in the elevator about me. So maybe I'll take pictures. Yeah, this is a fascinating website because it's got so much information. Talking about watermark identification, photocopy fraud. I mean, this covers everything under the sun. This is great. Again, this is going to be linked in the description. It'll be here down below in every part of our video. Hers and Bob's will be linked. If you guys need to contact her or Bob, you guys can definitely reach out. This is just fascinating information. Tonight, I'm just blown away with the amount of info that we discussed here. And this is just an hour show. We're just a little bit over an hour right now. Really quick, I wanted to ask one more thing before we went forward, because people, there was a super chat. That's what I wanted to do. This one, it says, seems an obvious question, but did anybody turn the page over and try to read the words on the back of where he scratched everything out? I don't know, Bob, would you be able to take that?
I think Cina covered that.
Did she?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yes,
So
special lighting would enhance that. Would be difficult to see it from the back.
we
Right,
put that super chat up and she answered that?
Yes, she answered it. Yes,
Oh my God.
indented writing would be obliterated because of the pen, and then we talked about how we tried to use an alternate light source to see through the ink for what was originally written underneath the obliteration.
All right, Josh, got to book me a doctor's appointment tomorrow, please.
No worries, it's all good. Are you kidding me? This was a great show tonight. Thank you all both for coming on tonight.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having us.
Anybody have any parting questions or parting comments you'd like to make, Cina? Lieutenant
I'll
Bob?
give her the final word.
Oh, wow. I would love to see more information in this case. And when you get that note from Brian Laundrie's mother, call me. I would like to see it.
Okay.
And I would be able to compare. Then I would actually have some handwriting to compare with the notebook. But if anybody out there has any handwriting of Brian Laundrie's, please have them call you, and I would be happy to look at that and compare it to the notebook.
Awesome. Awesome. And Schmitty is yelling at me in the chat here. She said, DutyRon, please could you read my super chat? She says, Schmitty's a great friend of ours, channel member. I can't say enough good things about her. She's always engaging before, during, and after the live streams. She said, such a great career. In my field, there are no pronouns in language of ASL. Content is key. Prodzy is key. So amazing that you have no audio or visual to go by. So interesting. Thanks.
Yeah, that's true. This content analysis applies to sign language as well. So, yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
Bob, I wanted you to maybe have your final input and thoughts here tonight.
Oh, I just was excited to be here because statement analysis is a kind of a discipline that's not very it's not out there publicized a lot, but it's incredibly accurate and dependable, and you find out so much about what's going on underneath the story. The story is just superficial, but the underlying meaning reveals so much about what's going on. I hope that it rises in popularity and that it becomes more dependable part of any investigation. So it's a real value, and I'm hoping that in that short period of time, people at least got a teaser about the kind of stuff that it can reveal. It's worth spending time doing for sure.
Absolutely. And then, Ed, I know you always have something to say at the end of all of these, so we're going to wrap it up. I hope everyone here in the chat and the replay viewers enjoyed this informative live stream. If you do like what you saw here tonight, please consider becoming a member and subscribing to Crime Time with DutyRon. I think I gifted over 50 memberships tonight, and that's a 1 month free membership to Crime Time with DutyRon. I did probably maybe 50 or more. And I do that because it's just now a feature that is available by YouTube. So you, as the viewer, also have an opportunity to gift. I think the minimum is 5 memberships, and you can send it out. It's just a 30-day trial for some of the folks who maybe on a fixed budget and things of that nature. And I think it was a great thing that YouTube did and gave the channel to the opportunity to do that. So thank you to everyone who has gifted memberships, and also to everybody who watches and engages. Leave us comments down below. Our guests, they have the link. Both Bob and Cina have the link to this live stream, so they can come tomorrow or whenever they have time. I know Bob's busy, Cina's busy, but whenever they have time, they can always come and look at the comments. So if you have questions for them, you can leave it down below underneath the video when it's done. I'm sure that they would be, happy to see some of your questions and concerns and comments about this live. As I always like to end these live streams, God bless the world, God bless the United States of America, and God bless each and every one of us here in the chat, but especially all victims of crime and their families across the globe. We want to just, again, put in our hearts and prayers the victims from July 4th. Their families, the community, they need us now more than ever. So we send strength, prayers, and positive vibes that way. Ed, I know you always like to say something before we're done.
Remember, folks, stay safe, be prepared, watch your 6, and we'll catch you on the next show.
Thank you, Bob and Cina, for joining us tonight on Crime Time with DutyRon. We'll see you soon.
Stand by, guys. Stand by. Okay.
Thank you.